Yeah, I'm here as a member of SNOWYPAA West. It is a YPAA conference that is very unique if you've ever been to any kind of AA conference. This one is, yes, we've got our meetings and the normal kinds of things you might expect at a YPAA conference. But we also spend a lot of time out in the mountains having some fun on the slopes. So it is March 6th through 9th. It's in Salt Lake City, Utah this year. Um, an absolute blast. I was a speaker there last year and then was given the opportunity to join the committee and do some West Coast outreach. So coming to you from uh, not so sunny today, California. It's raining here today, but yeah, this is actually my second time getting to speak at this. I was a member of the SWACY 10 host committee, and so I spoke here in July as a member of that, and now serve as a member of advisory. If you have questions on what that all that means, especially if you're new, it's just another one of the amazing opportunities that this program has given me to be of service. Then I'll get into that a little bit more. I have a sobriety date. It is January 25th of 2022. It is my first sobriety date. It's the first time I try to get sober. However, I had some pretty severe legal consequences I was facing when I got sober. So um, those were in the end blessings for me because they helped me get my footing that I really needed. They helped me find the willingness to really give this program a shot. Um, if you're new, you're feeling new, welcome. I hope you find here what I found here. Um, I did not identify as an alcoholic when I came to these rooms. It took me quite some time. Uh, I hope that through continuing to come back, my experience has been that honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, and acceptance are paramount to success in this program. Um, Alcoholism, as it was described to me and through this book, is really comes down to a few things. It's the mental obsession, first and foremost, that when I'm not drinking, I'm thinking about drinking, or I'm thinking about trying to manage my drinking, and if it's not drinking, it might be other substances as well, but that's a major part of it. It's that allergy of the body. It's that when I have alcohol in me, one's not enough and can never get enough, really. And the last one is the malady of the spirit, right? Those first two, if you're new, I will say in my experience, it did not take long for me to, didn't take me too long to stop the mental obsession every day of wanting to drink. Um, and when I'm not drinking, well, the allergy's not quite there, but that malady, that spiritual malady, that persists. And I, through this program, have a daily reprieve from that. I have a daily relief of my alcoholism if I'm actually working a strong program, which is not always the case. I am certainly not perfect, and, and I can tell you experiences that when I'm working a strong program, my life is better. And when I'm not, and especially when I am trying to take my will back, um, my life becomes just as messy as it ever was before. Um, to get into it a little bit, I don't want to spend too much time on my drunkalog, but I grew up in Lake Tahoe. That's where I found my love for skiing and part of why I'm a part of SNOWYPAA. I yeah, I from a young age really had that. I can, as long as I can remember, had that spirituality that all my needs were met. I have two loving parents that are still together today, but I was always seeking external approval. Um, I I don't know. I never quite felt right, and I constantly really wanted that external validation. And I think that's a major part of the malady of my spirit. Um, my drinking career started when I was about 14. I think the first and the second time I drank, really sum up to me what my drinking career looked like. First time I was with a couple kids a year older than me. They were, close friends. We drank quite a bit, but at the end of the night, like I was the one babysitting them, holding their head in the toilet. Um, Nothing too bad happened for me. The second time I drank, uh, when I kind of let my guard down, was like, oh, I got this. Uh, I ended up waking up the next morning face down on the bathroom floor in somebody else's clothing, not knowing where I was. And I had puked all over somebody's couch. I had made a total ass of myself. And my friend's older brother ended up having to basically shower me. Um, which is to say that my experience is that it's not how much you drink or how often you drink, it's what happens when you drink that makes you an alcoholic. And my experiences show me that the only way that I can keep myself from making extremely consequential, horrible decisions um, as a result of my drinking is by not drinking. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen if I drink tomorrow. It's that sooner or later it will happen. So, um, fast forward, I went to school up in Oregon. I was a business major within our business school. There was a hospitality program within that. They offered a wine certificate, so I took wine classes for business credit and found that very, very fun, especially the ones where I was able to drink. Wine appreciation is where it started, and I certainly appreciated wine. And through that, I all my upper division, marketing classes on the alcohol industry. I did my college internship with the largest alcohol distribution company in the world. And after graduation, um, I came and moved to Sonoma County, where I currently live, to work in the wine industry in world-class wine country. So, um, shortly after I arrived is when I got my first major consequence from drinking. It certainly wasn't my first consequence, but the first major consequence, which was my first DUI. I was coming home from work. I hadn't had too much to drink, certainly not by my standards, but I was eating some chicken wings and I was like, these sound better if I was high. And so I decided to like would taste better. So I decided to drive home and was rounding a corner and my phone slipped underneath my brake pedal and I reached down to grab it, and swerved off the road, hit like a tree, knocked over a speed limit sign, was a little dazed from the impact. And when somebody came to see if I was okay, they smelt the beer that was in my passenger seat and it exploded all over my dash, all over me. And I was like, "Oh, you reek, you're drunk." And I walked a couple miles away from the scene, just thinking, I think I messed up my car. I don't want to deal with this. I got to work in the morning. Before the cops came up on me, uh, did sobriety testing. And honestly, if I had been a little less honest, I probably, plausible deniability, probably could have gotten away with that first DUI. I was right around the legal limit, but um, one consequence in, and yeah, the insanity. I think a great way to a great way for me to recognize the insanity that I really have as it pertains to substances is I used to drive home on after work, smoke weed really quickly on my way to DUI school. I stopped drinking and driving for a while, but I continue to get high and drive pretty much every day. Um, that was about what? That was July of 2019. I moved home to Tahoe for COVID in March and of that year, and came home with 15 cases of wine uh, to two parents who are not alcoholics but fairly hefty drinkers, um, as they're described in the book. And yeah, my day to day, I was helping out my dad at his bike shop, and if I wasn't, I was hanging out with friends. Most days look like drinking a few beers in the daytime, cocktail hour with mom and dad, bottle of wine or two with dinner, and I was getting high the whole time. And yeah, as the book describes, the various ways that we mask our own alcoholism. One of the first times my mom ever called me out for being a little too drunk, a little too often by the time we got to cocktail hour, I decided, instead of drinking 8% IPAs in the daytime, I'm going to switch to 4% beer. That way I can drink the same amount, but just be a little bit more manageable by the time I get home, which just only led me to drinking more beers in the daytime in reality. I moved back to wine country the following summer, and yeah, that last 6 months of my drinking career, I lived with a brewer and a winemaker. Um, and it looked like waking up in the morning, probably finishing the half a beer that was still next to my bed that I had fallen asleep with, um, getting a bunch of caffeine in my system on the way to work to go talk about wine, my mouth moving faster than my brain could even process it, so maybe having a little bit of wine to cut some of that nerves, that angst that I had. Going home, taking a big old bong rip, uh, and drinking probably 5 or 6 beers, and that was every day for the last 6 months. It was very lonely. Came to a head with me, yeah, getting a really gnarly DUI that second time. I T-boned somebody on my way home from work and rolled their car and broke their window and got them out of their vehicle. And it was, after realizing that they were alive and not too badly injured and that cooler heads had arrived on scene, I decided to run about 100 yards down the road and hide in the bushes and call my parents, call my best friend because that fight or flight response was kicking in me. And I just remember looking up and that moment of incomprehensible demoralization. I can think of it right now. I mean, it took me a long time to process and haunts me to this day. I don't have regrets about my drinking career because of the life I get to live today. I just wish it didn't take hurting somebody else for me to get here. Um, After that moment, I realized, something needed to change. Again, I didn't think I was an alcoholic. That took me quite some time, to really come to grasp with, but I knew I had a severe nicotine addiction. Um, both of my DUIs were driving home to take bong rips, and that was how I actually smoked nicotine. I knew I had some impulsive decision making problems. Um, and yeah, I wanted to get right. And more than that, I think I just wanted to prove to you all and to myself that I wasn't a bad person. And so I started doing the things that I felt I needed to do, which started with doing outpatient rehab, um, going to AA meetings, going to therapy. That first 6 months of sobriety, was a really pivotal point in my life where I started to come to terms slowly with the fact that uh, I'm an addict and that the only way to change that is, or to, the only way that only thing I can do about that is continue to make horrible decisions or to change my actions and not go back to my prior career. So, um, lots of things I didn't do great. I didn't get a sponsor for the first 5 months I was sober. Again, slowly that open-mindedness, that willingness came. Once I did, my growth that I found in this program went from being incremental to exponential. Part of that is with finding a higher power, which at first was really just you all, the group of drunks. Math is a strong suit for me, and basic math, the sum of our perspective is greater than any individual's. Today, my conception of a higher power is so much more than that. I will say the word God really put me off for a long time. I had more than atheism, it's just like disdain for religion. Um, Today, I find it's funny, like you could almost call it agnosticism just because, and I don't truly, the book talks about God being everything or God is nothing. And if I view God as everything, how could I possibly conceptualize everything God is? So when it talks about a God of my understanding, my God of my understanding is that I can't fully understand. And there's freedom in that. There's absolute freedom in that. Um, and I know through that that if I have faith and I look for God working in my life, um, I can get through just about anything in this world. So, um, couple things, just couple little tidbits from the book that I wanted to highlight, a couple lines that really stick out to me from 62. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles, driven by hundreds forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in the position to be hurt. Uh, yeah, that really sticks out so much to me today, or on any day where I want to take other people's inventory. That's not mine to take, and I have to look at my part in everything. On page 68, perhaps there's a better way. We think so, for we are on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust an infinite God rather than our finite selves. We're in the world to play the role he assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us and humbly rely upon him. Does he enable us to match calamity with serenity? Um, yeah, again, and I'll go to the last bit of 47 of the what many people call the acceptance prayer on 417. I need to focus not so much on what's wrong in the world as in what's wrong with me and my attitudes. And that through that is how and through that reliance with God is how I can do so. The last thing I want to highlight is from page 420. It's perhaps my favorite line of the book. Um, and it's that my serenity is inversely proportional to my expectations. Um, and no matter what I do, that I can think so often I find myself thinking that the outcomes that I'm free from these expectations, and I'll find that's not always the case. And it tends to be a major part of what my part is, that I'm holding on to something that I think I know better than God. Um, and it's just makes me more and more miserable the less I can let go. Letting go is something I deeply struggle with. It's certainly a character defect of mine. Um, the only way I can do it is through faith. Um, that's all I've got tonight. Thank you so much for the meeting and for the opportunity. Very happy to be here.